I just started the recording so that we are sure to capture this presentation tonight for those who can't make it. So glad that so many of you came tonight, and we'll wait for a couple more here. We do have a microphone that might help. Does that help a little bit here? All right, we're going to use that. I'm hoping that everybody can. We have a really great microphone for folks online, so I'm assuming they're going to be hearing us. Oops, no, that's what I didn't want to do. Sorry about that. 1 minute.
Yes, we're not in school. No. I wish I had. I know that would probably be more fun to do it, but we'll try to make it Sunday. There's food available if you want. These are little chocolate nibs from the chocolate farm that we visited in Costa Rica.
All right, I think our last two people are arriving, and so we'll get started here. Welcome. Welcome, everybody. I'm so glad that you're here, and I'm so glad that we have this opportunity to share some stories with you about this sabbatical experience. And Megan and I are going to sort of tag team sharing stories, but we really intended this to be interactive, including you folks online. So we're gonna, we didn't want to just get up and say, here's the slideshow of our summer vacation, like, you know how that can go? So instead, we thought we should build in some interactive components and a chance for you to connect a little bit with each other and share some of your own stories that connect with ours and our trip. Megan and I are masking tonight because Satsy is home with COVID. So we're feeling fine, but just being cautious, protecting you all. Isa has danced tonight, so they both, though, gave us permission. They said, you can tell our stories, which is good to have, teenagers' permission. That's a lot. That's saying something, right?
We just won't let them listen to the recordings and tell the stories they didn't want.
Right. Exactly. I did show people in here. Do you think, Megan, I should still kind of tell folks online who's here?
I guess we muted them.
Yeah. There'll be plenty of chances to connect. I think you got a sense of who's in the room. Some of you got to see who's online. It's a great group. I'm so grateful for this technology. Cross your fingers, it all works really well. It'd be tricky to do that because as soon as you touch, it advances the slides.
Oh, we can't click on that.
See, like that. Oh. Hope she's feeling well. Thank you. Thank you. All right, so let's get started with the first thing that's not working. Oh, there we go. I guess it goes that way. So, sabbatical. What's a sabbatical? This is something that you all have written into the terms of call of your pastors. That every 6 years, the pastors earn a 3-month sabbatical leave. My original sabbatical was planned for 2020. As some of you know, we as a congregation applied for and received a clergy renewal grant from the Lilly Foundation. The grant was written by members of the congregation and myself, and we received, I think, $45,000. Part of that covered activities of the church and pastoral coverage while I was away. Some of it covered my activities. Incredible resource, incredible gift. The Lilly Foundation is investing in clergy because they worry about clergy burnout, and that sabbaticals are one way to kind of sustain clergy over the long haul. So then COVID came, of course, and interrupted our plans for 2020. So we decided to plan for 2 months of sabbatical leave, March and April of 2022, and 1 month this year in August of 2023. So, and part of the reason to split it up was we were in the middle of a pastoral search, you remember, and I wanted, speaking of which, the pastoral search resulted in Cynthia. Cynthia just walked in at the most opportune moment. So part of it was I wanted to be back in time for the final interviews, which ended up happening a little later than we thought, but nonetheless, it was actually a real gift to have 2 chunks because I had very different experiences that needed something different each of these times. So the sabbatical theme that we came up with was neighbors here and there. And this is what it says in the grant application. Our congregation has a long history of neighborliness, serving the hungry and homeless in our city, standing up for justice and inclusion of GLBTQ+ persons in the wider community, accompanying refugees for nearly 4 decades, and most recently serving as a sanctuary church for immigrants and engaging in related advocacy. Our neighborliness extends to being good stewards of the planet through caring for God's creation. The need for our engaged neighborliness has intensified in the past few years as the voices of fear, hate, and xenophobia have become emboldened in this country. This neighborliness requires sustained hope and spiritual energy. Reverend Blons, as lead minister, has led the church with skill, energy, and insight since 2013. His leadership, both within and beyond our congregation, in our immigration and refugee work, has been particularly significant over the last few years. It's time for him to pause, for more focused time with family that sustains him, for an extended sojourn with them to Latin America, an area that is both meaningful to the family and central to the congregation's mission work, and for time to rest and reflect deeply. It's time also for the congregation to deepen our understanding of our call to neighborliness and to engage in our own Latin American study. This theme is of course undergirded by passage from scripture that might be familiar to all of you. Jesus is tested, what must I do to inherit eternal life? And the answers with this sort of all-encapsulating summary. Love your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your strength, with all your mind, and love your neighbor as yourself. So with this sense of call to neighborliness that we reflect on and live in so many ways, that put a frame around the sabbatical. However, of course, the difficulties of the pandemic and a number of significant family health challenges, in some ways, the deep rest and reflection part of the 22 sabbatical became primary and essential. So while we had this neighborliness kind of framework in March of 2022, I mean, I was just coming off of, my heart attack 2 months previous, and just needed some downtime, some rest, some time to reflect and make sense of what had happened. We all did. We all needed some time. So in some ways that became primary and essential of this reconstituted plan for my sabbatical. Still, we met some amazing neighbors throughout both chapters of my sabbatical. And so for tonight, we chose to focus still on this theme of neighboring and share with you some of those stories. And in the spirit of connecting with neighbors, we're going to invite you to do some sharing with one another along the way. So it won't be just me talking, we'll be doing some talking as well. All right. So we begin in Costa Rica in March of 2022, the first part of our sabbatical. Costa Rica, Central American country. We spent most of our time, our sort of headquarters was in Nosara, which is on the Pacific coast. We also spent some time in Monteverde, which is right about here. And we were at a coffee plantation just outside of, how do you say that? Agassiz, I think. So that just gives you a little orientation of where we were physically.
A number of folks in the room have been to Costa Rica.
Yeah, who's been to Costa Rica?
Yeah.
Yeah, some folks, and folks online as well. So Nosara, on the Pacific coast. What a great place to begin to unwind. And there were no shortages of amazing sunsets. And the beach, of course, is the place to go to watch the sunset in Nosara. And every sunset is different, right? It's like every single one has a different color, a different mood, a different texture, a different feeling. But the amazing thing, and maybe it makes sense, but it was an aha, is that everyone comes to the beach at 5 o'clock to watch the sunset. The community kind of pours out from businesses, from homes, kids from school, everyone goes to the beach and pauses to witness the splendor, to take it all in. And it was a wonderful ritual to participate in as a visitor, but also a stunning reminder of the gift of a community pausing for awe, for wonder, for God's creation. Now, we weren't the only ones on these beaches. This is a olive ridley sea turtle. Olive ridley sea turtle, not a type of turtle I had heard of before. But on this black sand beach, I'm looking down on it from above, which is the Ocional Beach and Wildlife Reserve. It's one of the nesting grounds for the olive ridley sea turtles. And their story is an incredible one. Hundreds of thousands of ridley sea turtles lay eggs on the beach between August and December. But turtles nest there year-round. We were there right in March, so we weren't there during the prime season, but there's still turtles nesting there at different times. Each turtle lays about 80 to 100 soft shell eggs the size of ping pong balls. Babies hatch in about 45 to 55 days. And women and children from the community often come and accompany the babies on their way to the ocean to protect them from dogs and vultures and other threats. But generally, 1 in 1,000 baby turtles survive to adulthood. 1 in 1,000. So that's not even one out of every clutch, right? So we were told while we were there one day that tonight the turtles are nesting. So we got to go with the help of the park rangers on the beach and watch the sea turtles. These red lights were not invasive for them. They're not bothered by them. So we kind of kept our distance, and the guide would shine their light on these mama turtles who found a spot in the sand, who dug a hole.
And we watched the turtles coming out from the ocean, right? And it looked like they were just sitting there on the beach. They were
coming in and laying all these eggs and burying them in the sand. And then returning back out to sea. An incredible process to watch, stunning. They're so diligent in their work, so committed. But here's what we learned. We were told that none of the eggs we saw laid that night would survive. The sand temperature gets too hot in March and April, and so the embryos themselves don't survive. We asked if the sand was hotter because of climate change. And I remember the rangers saying, nah, they weren't, not really. They weren't kind of committed to saying yes. They sort of said no. Did you hear that? What did you remember?
Just that they said it's starting to get warmer and it's getting harder and harder.
Yeah. But the deal is that climate change is impacting them because rising sea levels are taking some of their nesting grounds, And rising temperatures at other times of the year do impact the survival of the eggs and also the gender. Like the temperature determines the gender of the eggs, which could throw off the gender balance of the species. The olive ridley sea turtle is listed as threatened.
Before we move to Monteverde, I think I'll just add a couple of things about Nosara. We initially went to Nosara because very good friends of ours from Berkeley, California, are living there for a year. And Jeremy and Cammie, and Jeremy was actually one of my staff when I worked for the San Francisco Conservation Corps in my 20s. And later I'll be telling a story about how friends become chosen family. And I was just sitting here thinking like, oh, right, they also became chosen family. I think, especially when they had kids at the same time as our kids. And, you know, I think all of you, know what that experience, to like have kids at the same time, you just get really close. So that was powerful. And then also just to add that Adam and the kids did really intensive Spanish lessons, much to Easter's chagrin. Because it was hard work and maybe the kids were farther along than Adam. And so it was hard to wait sometimes for Adam, who'd never had Spanish lessons, to catch up. But a lot of fun and I think a really rich experience. Is there anything else you want to add? So then we went to Monteverde, which is cloud forest and rainforest. And I love these signs, like, we have deer crossing signs, right? But I just thought that these were so cool. Like,
There was
really, there's snake crossing.
and a split leaf philodendron growing naturally in that.
Well, and we actually, along the way, we picked a few slides that are tropical plants that we all have as house plants here that you would just see everywhere. So even our first slide, if you were watching, was the snake plant.
Yeah, I saw that.
So I did drive my family crazy because I made them pull over so I could take pictures of the road sign. The Monteverde forest, 5,000 feet above sea level. So we went high and we could hardly breathe the first couple of days that we arrived there because we've just been at the ocean. 50% of Costa Rica's biodiversity is in this small part, and that's 2.5% of the world's biodiversity. Home to 425 species of birds, 120 species of mammals, etc. You can read the slide, but just life everywhere. And while we were there, I just kept thinking about how I've been doing a lot more work to address climate change, and how I really deeply have learned that the tropical rainforests are the lungs for our planet. And so even for all of us who will never get the chance to visit them, that we need to be taking care of them because we need them just as we need our lungs. And I learned that from a book that has nothing to do with the places we visited, but I take every opportunity I can to recommend it. Not only because I know the author, but Guardians of the Trees, A Journey of Hope Through Healing the Planet. That's about caring for the tropical rainforest in Indonesia and then Madagascar and Brazil. I'll pass it around. I thought I'd bring it because the author is a good friend of mine, and she's happy to do book author talks online. And I've been thinking about doing a big book read this winter, and if the folks from the church want to join us, that would be great. So I'll just share it. It's her memoir. And if you're like, oh, it's just Megan's friend and she's pitching some book that was self-published, Bill McKibben writes the quote on the front and Jane Goodall writes the quote on the back. So it's not, she's vetted.
And what's the author's name?
Henry Webb. But to just really remember, and when we were trying to pick like a few slides of Monteverde, I just really wanted to sort of showcase just the beauty and a reminder of the complexity. This photo is taken from up above the forest. Our kids got to do some zip lining. I think sad to grab this picture, but just really noticing just the incredible life that this offers us. One of my favorite moments on the trip was doing a night hike, which of course is very hard to get you good photos, but you can see a couple just to get a sense. We saw a number of snakes. My favorite moment, which we couldn't get a good picture of, was a nest of baby hummingbirds. So imagine how tiny they were. Just incredible. So
What's on the right?
give you a sense of that. I was trying to figure out what that was on the right.
I think it's actually a snake.
It's a different snake though, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's like the long snake. I picked it just to give a sense of like, this was the night hike. Our kids' eyes were just, even in the dark, you could see them, they're just huge, like this is a whole different world. And then just everywhere, right? Lots of details and reminders that there's a lot more life outside of us humans in the world. Fungi. You know, and just how complicated an ecosystem it is, right? Where all these plants are surviving with each other so many ways. I'm actually reminded in this picture, just to sort of weave in some other stories. Just a month ago, I was at the Menominee Nation in Wisconsin, and had the opportunity to spend 4 hours with a forester from the nation on tribal lands. And usually folks who are non-native are not invited onto the land. And the whole 4 hours was him trying to figure out how to get, honestly, like those of us who were there, a mixed group, but non-native folks of white and folks of color, to get it that trees have stories and life, and that there are elders, and we have so much to learn from them. So I think if he was here now, he'd be like, pay attention to that tree and what that tree has to tell us. Their name? Exactly. That's good. Let's connect it back. Just a couple more pictures. So from Monteverde, do you want to add anything about Monteverde? We then got to go to La Finca Anita, which is a chocolate farm. And that's where the cocoa nibs that we brought came. And it ended up being an incredible treat. Not a good business model for them, but we ended up being their only guests. So we got to really know the owners and spend lots of time and eat meals together. The first thing I want to showcase, because I really care about Pablo and Anita, who run the farm, and it's a sustainable farm, is that it's a beautiful place that's really easy for Minnesotans to visit. So I feel like I have to do a tour as a moment for them. It is about an hour from Liberia, which Delta has nonstop flights to. It's cheap if you were paying attention to flights. And an easy to get to, but it's an like I said, a sustainable farm, beautiful places to stay. In front of our cabin were pineapple growing, which we didn't get a good picture of, but I just thought was amazing to watch the pineapple grow. Places to just rest and disappear. See, at least I got my mom want to go. That's good for me. If you need me to help you, we can do it. And we did do a chocolate tour on the farm. This is Pablo, one of the two owners. And just talking a lot about, you know, it was really important to him that we understand the history of chocolate. It is not European, right? It comes from Mesoamerica, and the Oltec and Mayan cultures really brought chocolate to the world. Then of course it's gone lots of different places. And you know, and then it's incredible because we get to taste all the chocolate. So, like I said, we tried to bring a little something back for folks to taste. I would say it doesn't travel that well, but in person, it was amazing, right? But what was also incredible about this farm is everything that they're doing to really honor the planet and the, you know, just be truly sustainable in lots of different ways. And for those who've been in Costa Rica, I'm sure they can attest to, it's by far the most environmentally friendly place I've ever been. It's just amazing all over the country, and to recognize, I mean, when we were in Guatemala, in such a different place, that it felt like everyone we talked with was really working to make sure that, and you know, for financial reasons too, right? I mean, Costa Rica's done well as sort of for ecotourism, et cetera. But it was just really, truly inspiring. And I think the neighbors could teach us a lot about what we need to do to take care of our planet. So with that, do you want to say anything more about our first discussion question for you all, and we'll set you up in breakout rooms online too, is where have you witnessed the impacts of climate change or met someone who's living in a more sustainable way? And several of you mentioned that the world is really hard right now as you came in the door. So I'd encourage you to take the second part of the question. What are you learning from folks who are living in a more sustainable way? Yeah. So we thought just to pair up and encourage you to maybe pair up with someone you don't live with. Spend a little time talking to each other. So just a few minutes to pair up with some This is also the chance for those of you in the room to grab some more food or water.
All right, folks online, we're just gonna send you to a couple breakout rooms, pairing you up. I don't know if that works exactly, but just do a little sharing with each other and connect. Some of you who don't have your cameras on, I hope you're willing. Just take about 5 minutes. Hey, Dad, do you want to go to a breakout room? I can send you one.
No, actually.
You're okay, just waiting?
Yeah.
Okay. Hey, Dan, welcome. We just sent people to some breakout rooms.
You know, I was literally just like checking in. I'm in the midst of bedtime and I kind of just wanted to see what was up, but I will probably not go to a breakout room.
Okay, that's fine.
Sorry about that. Didn't mean to ruin your flow.
No, it's all good. We're just trying to give people a chance to connect.
No worries. All right. Well, I'll wish you a good night.
We'll start coming back to you last week.
What do you? It's amazing.
All right, let's come back together and look at.
Yeah, that's awesome.
There you go.
Who's living in a more sustainable way? No, and Megan, England. So that's
Fuzzy face. Fuzzy face.
That would be really happy. Did he have a beard when you met him?
A couple times on trips.
I think it's gonna happen.
All right, we need to keep going so that we don't keep you all too late and then you're mad at us later. The chocolate won't last you that long. Thanks for coming back. So our Jet Set grant meant that not only did in spring of 2022, that our whole family of four got to go to Costa Rica, but Adam and I got to go on a 10-day trip to England by ourselves, thanks to my mother over here and Steve and Jan online for helping take care of our kids and support them so that we could do this trip. And the trip was inspired because of this person. There we go. Oh, that's right. We had a fun trip. We did have some fun on the time. So for those of you who've read Harry Potter, Adam got to visit platform 9 and 3/4. And you know, you got to do the telephone booth picture in London. And so we flew into London. We spent a few days in London getting over the time difference. And having a great time and really excellent food. If anyone goes, we've got a couple recommendations for you. Wow, I'm still dreaming of some of the food. But then we traveled up to Birmingham where we spent some time. And the reason that we chose to do this trip is because of this wonderful person, Min Gang. And Min was a student of mine at UC Berkeley. I got to know her when she was 18 years old. And I have to tell you a hard story. I won't tell you much of the detail, but I got to know her really well. When she was 19 and she asked me to help her leave her family because they were selling her into prostitution.
Oh, gosh.
So I did, along with a lot of other people who supported her. So I knew her as a student, and then she actually came onto my staff. I was directing the public service center at the university, so she worked on the staff. But at some point she came to Adam and I and said, I need a family, can I adopt you? So she's been part of our family ever since. Our kids call her Auntie Minnie. She stayed with my aunt and uncle when she was on a college tour. Actually, she spoke here at McAllister College probably several decades ago now and stayed with them. So it's really become part of our family. And so it felt really important to go for her wedding. And actually 9 of my old staff and students came along. So it was just this really powerful experience to have folks come from all over the United States and also all over the world, but those of us who had known her since she was an undergraduate student to be there as her family at the wedding. It was also just an amazing cross-cultural experience. Pete is from like Birmingham, like whole town, very thick accent. We had to have his vows sent to us later because we couldn't understand what he said, right? Just cross-cultural moment. And then it's from the United States, born and raised, also Vietnamese American. And so just bringing those different traditions together was really powerful. So we were really grateful to be there. Sure. Yeah, actually, And so now the relationship with Min is, this is actually one of my bosses right now. Min is running an international organization called Survivor Alliance that supports survivors of human trafficking and teaching leadership development skills. And I've been working as a leadership coach for their senior leadership team. So, you know, relationships change, right? But all along the way, we've been family. And I just threw in a couple pictures of some of the other folks that came from across the world to support men. And it raised the question for us, when are moments for you all that neighbors and folks have become chosen family? I think we all, I mean, I think name experiences for some of us. I'm looking at Margot, of people who come through our church and become chosen family. But what are some of those other stories? So we'll take just a moment for you to turn to somebody and share a story.
Thinking about Cindy. Well, the exciting thing, she brought her two sisters here. She wanted them sooner. She rented an apartment in Europe. And she had three younger sister, well, they had finished in Central High School, but the courts. They were living with an aunt in Los Angeles area. So it was a custody. Anyway, so the one sister graduated high school and came this summer. And Cindy went out there and saw the graduation and went inside and then the little sister came 2 weeks after high school started here. And Cindy changed her apartment by now she's in an apartment right Johnson Dolores and right next to the her sisters in that 2-bedroom. Yeah. So she's been going on tonight and she had a garage. And they get to the dorm room. And Brooks would feel on and their sisters in graphic and the other one is she even home site our neighborhood because she rented her little sister to ride the bus from the city. So she rides the bus in the summer and east. Her name is America. Neighbors, they lived up in the Ridley area. But they haven't come to church down into right. We've never made Cindy just yeah.
We had a good experience.
So I haven't talked since that.
19 years old.
She's so her sisters are from university. Had a really busy schedule.
So she was with us for a year. We still have the connection.
No, you guys travel to, are you in touch with any, were you in touch with any of you guys that?
This one-
But they're still in. How did you know that light over short?
Okay, just, one more minute, then we'll come back, one more minute.
And did the kids go back to running your
Right.
Okay, we come back together. Okay, so the third part of our trip, third part of the sabbatical was the part of the sabbatical that happened this year, 2023, in August. When our family went to Guatemala. Ironically, this is the only part of what we did that was part of the original plan. We had other, we thought we were going to Nicaragua, and we thought we were going to Mexico, and number of other pieces. But this is the part we were able to come back to and follow through on. So that was a real gift. We spent most of our time initially around Lake Atitlan, which is this large lake surrounded by volcanoes, and a little bit of time in Antigua, right there, which is we spent a week there. Those were kind of our main places to orient you a little bit to where we were. This is Lake Atitlan. It's again gorgeous. It's hundreds of feet deep. It's crystal clear blue water, and it's surrounded by many little villages. We started off in Panajachel, and that was kind of our home base for the first couple of days. But we knew we wanted to experience some of the other little villages around Lake Atitlan. And we know that 30 years ago, this church was part of supporting one of those communities through the Panamache project, which helped 30 Mayan families purchase land outside of San Lucas Tolaman, which is one of the towns on Lake Atitlan. We didn't visit San Lucas Tolaman or the Panamache project on this trip, but we made some other connections that have to do with our congregation, and we wanted to share about that with you. So from Panajachel, the next town over, literally the very next town over, was Santa Catarina Oloco. And so we heard about Santa Catarina Oloco because Emma Grizanzio, who some of you know, part of our congregation, was a young adult service communities volunteer here He's been a significant member on our immigration team. Emma told us about Christian. Through Emma, we met Christian. Christian was the child of the family that Emma lived with in Santa Catarina, Polopo, when she was a student in college. She went there for a short time, a month or something. Had such a great experience. She stayed with Christian's family.
She went back after graduation.
She went back,
for 3 months.
yeah, she went back after graduation for 3 more months to spend time there. She just had a transformative experience. So they stayed connected. And eventually Christian reached out to Emma as he was making his way, leaving Guatemala and coming to the United States. And Emma, of course, connected him to our congregation, and we offered some support to him as he was transitioning to moving to Minnesota, where Emma became his official sponsor, immigration sponsor. He's now 21 years old, but he was a teenager when he became 16, I think 17 when he arrived. And so as a minor, he needed a sponsor. And so Emma, bless her heart, Emma volunteered to be his sponsor. All right, fast forward a couple of years. Here we are in the middle of the pandemic. Through Emma, through Christian, we learned that his family in Santa Catarina, Polopo was struggling because of the pandemic. There was very little access to food. And in fact, fresh vegetables were only being delivered to the next town over. And of course, not everybody had income. A lot of tourism's the main source of income for a lot of folks. With all that went away during the pandemic. So families were struggling, and Christian's family wanted to help. Christian told Emma, Emma reached out to us. Fundraising that we had done here as a congregation, we gathered some funds to help support immigrant families. We sent money through Christian's family to their community. So fast forward back to our travels, we went to go visit Santa Catarina, Polopo, and Christian's family. However, we had no idea where they lived. We had no phone number, we had no contact information. We knew their names, and we knew that they lived in this town next to us. We didn't even know how to get to the town.
And Emma sent us a photo of their store, so that we could like walk around with the picture.
So this is one of those memorable travel moments with our kids where we are on an adventure. We don't know exactly how we're going to get to where we're going and where it is. We asked a number of people, how do we get to the next town over? Because we heard there were these pickup trucks that you could get on. They said, well, you can get the pickup truck at the bridge. I'm like, okay, down this street. So we're on our way. And then somebody else we asked, they said, no, it's at the store. You get picked up at the store. So we went to the grocery store. We waited for a while. This kind man looking at us, Megan, who speaks Spanish, got us out of many jams and into amazing conversations, helped communicate what we were trying to do. And he flagged down a pickup truck that we could climb in the back of. Usually there's 9 or 10 people in the back of a pickup truck. For just a few bucks, you can go to the next town. So we rode to the next town, to Santa Catarina, Polopo, walked into the middle of town and like, okay, well, now how do we find this family? How do we find their store? We finally showed the picture of the store to a person who was wearing kind of a colored vest that looked like maybe a information person or a traffic person. And they said, oh, I think it's down this way. We walked down the street until we found Christian's father, who was outside. We went up and we introduced ourselves. We said, we know Christian, we're from the church in Minnesota. He's like, oh my gosh, he opened his store, which wasn't even open at that moment. Welcomed us in and began just talking to us about their store and about their family. We came at a really difficult moment because this picture here is their daughter, who had recently, like within the last few weeks of us being there, died of brain cancer. So they had set up this this little altar to remember her. But we let her know that we were from the church and that we wanted to we wanted to meet them and, that we knew Christian and, so we made it a point to come back, a little bit later, when the rest of the family was there with him. And so Christian's mom is in the back wearing a hat. These are cousins, these are the kids, I think, of, the daughter who died, which are now part of, Christian's parents' family, circle of care. And through Megan's Spanish, we were able to have a conversation. And again, we learned what happened with the money that we sent. So the money that we sent, this family went to the next town and bought vegetables, fresh produce that wasn't available in their community, and brought it back and distributed it first to the elderly, to the disabled, and to single mothers. They said it was our priority to give it to the people who were most vulnerable, who had least access. And so that's what we were, that's what we were able to support through their generosity and their connections in the community. I don't think we knew exactly what was happening at the time, but it was amazing to be there, to meet the family, to thank them for that, for including us in that support, and they thanked us. It was a beautiful experience. I think all of us were feeling the grief. You could feel the weight of the grief of the family, losing their daughter in all of this as well. We went from there across the lake to San Pedro La Laguna, and had a few more days exploring that community. One of the highlights of that experience was through the host, our host at our Airbnb. We were invited to a Mayan ceremony.
And actually, I have to add this because of you, Don.
Right.
So Don had said that his friends suggested that we should try to experience a Mayan ritual. And I tried to get in contact with the two folks that you told us to get in touch and never reached them. So I just said it to our host, who was a local, and she was sort of like, maybe. And then she called back a few hours later and she's like, I have a friend who do this. She doesn't usually do it for tourists or Americans. But I told her that I think, you have something different to bring. So thank you to Don for helping make this story happen.
Yeah. And the ritual was really mostly about calling on ancestors. And for Mayans, the ancestors are present. They're a daily source of support and encouragement and guidance. And so the ritual was about calling our ancestors into our circle and into our lives, and to bring healing. And it was a powerful experience. Again, all translated by Megan, who I think was exhausted after.
It was like 2.5 hours. Like we're just telling you as a short version.
So the last part of our time was spent outside of Antigua. Antigua is a pretty bustling place. It's not the capital, but it's a very lively community. And the reason we went there is because 25 years ago, when I was in seminary, I went to Guatemala, to Antigua, and learned about an organization called Common Hope. I'm going to tell you a little bit about Common Hope. Actually, through this video, you'll learn a little bit more. But a couple of things before we get started. First is Common Hope is based here in Minnesota. They work primarily to support children to graduate from school, help them through school. Only 18% of Guatemalans graduate high school. So this organization has kind of been created organically around these kids to try to figure out what are the things that support a kid to graduate. It's not just helping them with schoolwork, it's also making sure they have a place to live and making sure their family has access to healthcare. So there's a lot of pieces that are part of this program, which when I was there 25 years ago was was already 20 years old. So it's like in its 45 years old at this point. And I have to just tell you briefly that when I was there, I got to meet the son of the founders of Common Hope. And I shared this a little bit in worship, and you may not all have heard this story, but the family, the parents were born and raised Catholic, that kind of Catholic with a sense of social justice, showing up and serving the communities, especially poor communities. They went to Guatemala in the 80s when it was a really violent and difficult place to be for anybody, and felt called to start a school. That was how they thought they could help address some of the needs there. And one night, as often happened to people who were trying to do good things, they were confronted by a squad of men with guns who basically said, your family needs to leave the country tonight. So they fled, they got in their car, I guess they had a car, and they drove all the way to Mexico that night, overnight, to escape. And they came back to Minnesota, and this is the part that was so amazing, and to hear it from their son, because this was a whole family commitment that they were making in this effort. He said he was just a teenager at this time. He came home and his parents basically said, this work is so important. Families need help in Guatemala. We feel so called to do this. We're going to go back and keep going. And it just is powerful to think about what that thought process, what that prayerful process was for them, to have their lives threatened, but then to decide that this work, this mission was more important than their well-being, than their lives, and that they were willing to go back and face all of that. Really inspiring example of faith, a commitment to neighborliness in a way that I think is powerful as well. And 40-something years later, the organization has grown. It's all run by Guatemalans. What they do is they welcome for a week groups of volunteers to come learn, work, help around with the mission of the organization, with some of their projects. They help build houses, so we accompanied a group from Hennepin Avenue United Methodist Church, from here, from Minneapolis, that had already been scheduled to go. So we joined their team and spent the week together learning and working at Common Hope. So this video, it's only 2 minutes. It gives you a little sense of some of the sights and sounds, some of the sights of visuals of what we did. You'll see the group, you'll see the four of us integrated into what was happening. It just gives you a little insight here. I did.
a youth group. I know.
So, yeah, one of the things to say is that the group from Hennepin was a mission trip. But they didn't have enough youth to go, there needed to be a certain number of adults, they opened it up, so it was truly an intergenerational mission trip. Which I think is an interesting thing for us to think about as we go forward. You know, with varying numbers of youth in our program. And I think a successful history of adult mission trips, adult service trips that this congregation has done in the past. What if we travel together? What might that be like? So it was beautiful to be part of a group that was doing that and experiencing that and exploring that possibility. One last story about this. So we had the privilege of doing some home visits. Each of us in pairs actually got to go out with one of the social workers from Common Hope to visit families, which the social workers are kind of the glue, the circulatory system of the work, because the social workers know kind of how it's going with the family and the kids, and help bring resources when needed. And it was an incredible privilege to be able to accompany them on visits. One of the visits that somebody in our group did was with a family. I got my shirt.
Oh, yeah.
That made clothing, and later they invited her to come back to where we were staying to bring clothing, her clothing to sell to our group. I bought a shirt, which I meant to wear tonight. So, but it was a really profound moment for Satya, because, you know, throughout this whole experience, in both trips, I think, you know, we were having all kinds of interactions with people that were going beyond kind of the surface, tourist experience, you know, like Christian's family, or this Mayan ceremony. Like, we're having these deeper kinds of connections, and so you can feel that there's this possibility. Well, when this woman came to sell us her clothes, Satya had kind of a breakdown around this, and really was grieving the fact that in this moment, all we were to this person was customers, and that the only kind of transactional relationship would be this consumerist one. Recognizing, of course, that our money is what supports life and is important, but at the same time feeling disappointed that, you know, there wasn't a way to have a different kind of relationship, to know more about each other. And I think many of us have had that experience of traveling and knowing that we walk into a town and people look at us and think, this is an opportunity for me to sell something. And we know that money makes a difference in their lives, but wanting more connection, wanting a more meaningful connection. So it was really awesome for Satya to be able to kind of express that. And for us as a family to have a moment of stopping and just paying attention to, like, yeah, that just seems wrong. Like, we don't want a world where there's this huge income inequality, where folks, you know, are in this survival mode, where we're seen only for our resources, while at the same time knowing we need to do, you know, something with those resources that's just and sustainable for not just us, for others as well. So that's one of the big pieces of this whole experience is seeing developing countries through the eyes of our kids, and what a gift that is for them, and perhaps impacts their lives in ways we won't know for a while. I think I want to skip the last discussion question, and instead I want to offer a poem, and then I want to open it up for questions. Okay.
This is something that we saw in Costa Rica, and it means we are a mixed flock. So we just like this.
maybe at the end, I'll post a link to this poem for those of you online. I was just looking for poems that spoke to this call to neighborliness and especially around being neighbors with our immigrant neighbors, recognizing our immigrant neighbors. So this poem is called "Set the Garden on Fire" by Chen Chen. My friends, new neighbors in the suburbs are planting a neat row of roses between her house and theirs. Her neighbors smile, say the roses are part of a community garden project, that's all. But they whisper too, whisper plans for trees, a wall of them. They plant rumors that her house is hiding illegals when it's aunts and uncles visiting. They grow tall accusations fed by talk radio that her house was bought with drug money, not 17 years of walks sizzling, people serving, delivering, filling, people scrubbing, refilling, running, her family running the best restaurant in town. Like with your family, my friend says, once we moved in, they stopped calling us hardworking immigrants. Friend, let's really move in. Let's plunge our hands into the soil, plant cilantro and strong tomatoes, watermelon and honey-hearted cantaloupe, good things, sweeter than any rose. Let's build the community garden that never was. Let's call the neighbors out, call for an orchard, not a wall. Trees with arms free, flaming into apple, pear, peach, every imaginable edible fire. Come, friend, neighbor, you, come set the garden on fire with all your hard-earned years, tender labor of being here, ceaseless and volcanic, making of being here together. So thank you all for the gift of this sabbatical. Thank you for supporting my time away. Thank you, Cynthia, for coming in to support that time away, both temporarily and permanently. It is such a privilege, a gift to have this time, and we're grateful. And we brought back a gift for the church. So one of the things that we got from Common Hope were lanyards, homemade lanyards made by Mayan family. And so we brought back enough for everybody to get a new lanyard for their name tag. Well, from being all here, you get to be the first to pick out the new lanyard. We can make the switch, and it's easy to just take the same plastic piece.
No more plastic.
Take the plastic part off and just attach one of these lanyards. I would love some help at some point, figuring out how to roll this out to the whole congregation. We need some people to kind of help make that transition. I'm not sure how it's all going to work with all those lanyards and our name tags and the trays and all that, but I figured we can figure this out.
Yes.
And what a way to remember that we are neighbors across many miles in many different ways, not just through our travels, but through our ministries, through our families, and through great gift of this kind of engagement. So again, thank you all so much. I do want to open it up for any questions.
You want to set up the chat or you want to watch it? Or answers.
We're so glad you could do it. So glad you're healthy again.
Yes, thank you for that. I now can see everybody online. I can see folks who have their cameras on. If you want to indicate that you have a question online too, you can certainly raise your hand or put something in the chat. I'm happy to answer any questions. Don has a question.
I'm imagining we didn't really have time to explore this aspect, but
I was aware that when you were there, Guatemala was in a very important political transition time. In which, maybe their first democratic president in many, many years was elected very unexpectedly. Did you have any connection with that, or?
I mean, absolutely, because the day we flew out was election day, and Common Hope actually really wanted us to be sure to leave, because folks didn't know what would happen with the election. But so there were political signs everywhere, and parades, and everybody talking about the election. So we flew out that morning, and the election went, what everyone thought went really well. And then if you're paying attention to the news, things have been really hard in Guatemala since. The candidate who was elected by, I think, everybody's admission as the president is being challenged by the other runner, and it's gotten pretty difficult. And I think the US has just sent down some folks to try to help. So it's gotten really complicated.
One of the things that I specifically asked a few people, a few Guatemalans, how they were feeling about the election. And one of the constant themes throughout the last, I don't know, 4 or 5 decades, maybe more, has been the presence of corruption in government. And, this election, some had hoped that this candidate who won would bring an end to some of that corruption. There's kind of a lot of cynicism about government there, and because of that corruption. So it remains to be seen, what the outcome will be. But it was on everybody's mind when we were there. Is that Mary Jo raising her hand? And you're gonna need to unmute yourself there, Jim, so I can hear Mary Jo. Maybe I can unmute you.
We know it's getting late, people help themselves, more food.
Jim, can you unmute? Can you unmute yourself there, Jim, so we can hear? Again, meanwhile, if anybody else has a question they want to write in the chat, I can answer it, or anybody else here.
There you go. There you go.
All right,
Are
Mary-
are we unmuted now?
Yeah, let it rip.
Okay, this is a more personal question. I was thinking about Isa and Satya. And the experience of your family being together for such long stretches of time in strange places, new places. And while the pictures of the girls are just wonderful, you really get the idea that they're in it. I wondered what it was like to be with them and for your family to be together that way.
I think overall it went really, really well, except for Isa being frustrated with Adam's Spanish lessons. As
I didn't.
I will say, going to Guatemala where we just had no idea, you just can't plan a trip like that. You sort of just have to go with it and figure out the pickup trucks and where you're going and all of that.
Yeah.
I think Isa would be okay with us saying that she's a planner. Like, she planned Christmas months ago, a planner. And so it was hard and intense and not knowing what we were getting into and what it would be like to be with this group from Hennepin Church who we didn't meet until we arrived. Although then it turned out, because there's family connections to Hennepin, that, we all had lots of people in common. And so I think that piece, and certainly the poverty is just hard, but I think that was hard for all of us. And
Yeah.
wanting to, I think they were touched in powerful ways. But
Real growing moments.
I mean, the personal question, right, Mary Jo, is just like, I think we still all really like each other, and and it was wonderful to have that time together. Second, when we left Guatemala, it was like, maybe I'll go for a year and spend time there. So it'll be interesting to see what happens.
We thought of you so much while you were gone.
Thank you.
Every time I had a conversation with somebody from the congregation, you would come up as a family and how are they doing? And geez, you know, people carried you in their hearts like crazy, especially since what you all had been through with Adam physically in the months before,
Sure.
you know, the year before. We were just really happy that you could have this time
Thank you.
together, the whole family together. That's all.
Thank you so much. Other questions? Well, we certainly will.
Hi. Oh,
Go ahead, Ray.
Oh,
Hi, Ray.
just one comment. The all, going to Guatemala, places like this in Central America, we should remind ourselves of our long history of colonialism, which created these conditions going back 100 years when the large multinational corporations came in, took over the agriculture and other resources with our support, and put the small farmers and people supporting themselves out of business.
Yep.
That's why they're poor.
Thanks, Ray.
Absolutely.
I could,
And still continuing that work.
I could add that it's not exclusively the fault of the United States in a country like Guatemala, that the society that's existed under Spanish colonialism
Right.
was very oppressive, exploitative.
Yeah.
Right.
All of the above.
Yeah.
That's what started it. And
Fascinating, just as a.
we remember the 80s, what was going on there.
Well, there's a small visual that even still in Guatemala, people would tell us if they're from one of the 23 indigenous groups, all of which speak different languages. And
Right.
very present in really powerful ways in Guatemala. So people would also say, or my family's from Mexico or from Spain.
Yeah.
So that just, tells you something there.
And I remember when our daughter was there in one of those remote villages through the Augsburg program, all they had to eat was some rice imported, cooked and ground up with one tomato. That's it, all they ate.
I think the other thing to say is, it really, you have kind of ideas about what poverty is when you're sitting, in your well-to-do neighborhood. But to be there creates a much more complex and real picture, both of the hardship, but also of the fact that, there's joy, there's beauty, there's
Right.
connection, there's family love, there's all these rich things as well. And to have that complex picture of poverty is a real gift, rather than objectifying it and think it's just one thing or just another. I just this home visit we did,
Right.
this family had just, from my perspective, just nothing, like very few pieces of furniture and
Right.
a dirt floor, and but there were balloons. There were balloons on the wall, and they had celebrated somebody's birthday recently. And
Right.
in the midst of all that there was also a commitment to balloons. Was just a really powerful reminder.
And they're very generous with what they do have.
Please feel free, those are here if you want to keep eating, if you want to take off.
I think you might have heard that.
Answer any other questions, but thank you again for being here tonight. Thank you so much.
What'd she say? I have no idea.
Okay.
Gracias.
Bye, take care, those of you who are online, take care.
Thank you for sharing.
Hello, guys, this is my.
Kim Law, right there.